Hello, welcome to Mike's Nest Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bishoda, and happy Monday morning to you. So we're going to talk about the Mets' 5-1 win over the Miami Marlins, as well as the extraordinary debut of Kodai Senga. So let's talk about Senga and how this was probably the most interesting debut I've seen from a Mets pitcher in some time. I'm going to go back to maybe Jacob deGrom's debut back in 2014, where there are differences. DeGrom came up with absolutely no expectations whatsoever, but delivered in what was a clearly very important debut. Senga, very much the opposite, has enormous expectations. There's a lot of pressure surrounding his performance this year, particularly with the injuries early on in the season, so there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, more than there was probably going to be before. So he enters this game against the Marlins in a situation where the Mets have a chance to take the series. It's the final game of the four-game series, and Senga has an interesting first inning. Well, first let's talk about the Mets in the top of the first, who come through in a big situation where it looked like they were going to leave men on base. And it could have been a disastrous situation there, but managed to come through thanks to a Jeff McNeil slow swinging bunt, I guess would be the best term for what he does in that at bat. But he gets the ball on the ground. Trevor Rogers, pitching for the Marlins, makes a asinine decision to just kind of shovel the ball forward after he fields it. And he shovels it low and away, basically nowhere near the first baseman, Yuri Gurriel, for the Marlins. Ball goes into the foul territory, 2-run score, and the Mets all of a sudden have a 2-run lead. And this is great. Okay, Kodai Senga, you got a little bit of a cushion now. Great, go ahead and let's see what you do with it. Senga proceeds to have one of the most disastrous first three at-bats I've seen from a Mets pitcher. It's tough to say what exactly was his issue. I think really more mechanic-related. I think there are going to be situations where people are going to look at him and say, what's going on? And they have to remember that this is a transition period for him. He is in a new landscape. He has a completely different caliber of hitters that he's facing, a new rule system that he has to get used to. He doesn't speak the same language as his catchers, his coaches, or he does, but it's not his primary language. So there are going to be situations where he's just dealing with a lot more adversity than others do. And this is why players like Shohei Ohtani are so impressive, because Ohtani has established that he is the most talented player in baseball, but also has to deal with so much more than the average player, like, so let's say Mike Trout on the Angels. So Kodai Senga is entering a tough situation. Again, he has really no control. I guess that would be probably the best term for what's going on. But in that first inning, he gives up a single to Luis Arias, and what was Arias's, I think, like 90th single that series. Throws a wild pitch right after that. Arias goes to second base. Horace Allaire promptly doubles to right field. Arias scores. Not so good. He then walks the next two batters. He's got a bases loaded situation at this point. And you don't really know what exactly is going to happen, because you're like, this is just an absolute disaster. He has no outs at this point. A bases loaded situation, and he has Yuli Gurriel coming to the plate. He manages to get Gurriel striking out swinging on that next at bat. Jesus Sanchez would then strike out right after him, and then finally he has John Birdie up to the plate. And Met fans will know John Birdie is the most annoying player in the world. He is the definition of just like a slap hitter, a guy who just happens to be in the situation to screw it up for the Mets at all times, apparently. Just a huge Met killer. And Birdie lines out, and this is like, if they had been shading him maybe like 20 feet to center, Starling Marte had been not playing as far to the right of right field as he was. This might be like they might clear the bases. Honestly, I don't know what exactly happens, but fortunately, Marte is positioned in the right area. He's able to run down this liner out to right, and Senga's out of the inning. He escapes this just like absolute like catastrophe that he was walking into, and he had created himself. He like the Mets didn't like create errors behind him. He hadn't done anything. He's just giving a base hits and walking batters, and he had to dig himself out of the hole. And he does it with seemingly like really very little like problems to this. Like he actually comes out of it okay. Like they're still leading 2-1 after it. Now you can say this is part of Senga's just like his ability. I mean, he is very talented. There's no doubt. I do think the Marlins are wildly incompetent. That is true, and that is the truth. But it was a disastrous situation potentially, and I was watching this game with my dad, and my dad will famously write off anybody if they don't do anything immediately correct, and he would say that is true. But I told him I was like you're writing his obituary in real time right there, and like he comes out of it, and from that point on, it is an amazing performance from Marte, who just racks up K after K after K. I think he only allows one more base hit. I think that's correct. Yeah. He allows one more base hit and walks one more batter from after that first inning. But he is honestly like just dominant from that point on. For the next 4 innings, he would just strike out He would strike out 6 more batters. Only allows 1 hit, 1 walk, and looks terrific. I mean, and a lot has been made about Senga's repertoire. He has the good high 90s fastball. He can put it up to 99 miles an hour in a situation where he has to push himself, but he will usually sit pretty comfortably around 95 to 97, which is excellent velocity. And he follows it up with this slider that's kind of a wavering, wild pitch, at least what we saw in the first game. I don't know if he had total control over it, but this was the pitch that famously that the Marlins computer system that they use to determine what is the pitch type and put it up on the scoreboard. They couldn't figure out what he was throwing in that situation. They just kept throwing up the word unknown on the scoreboard every time he threw it. And I don't really know what it was. Some kind of off-speed pitch. I don't know what it was, but he didn't really have total control over it. But he was using it to get like a lot of strikes on right-handed batters. So I don't really know if it's an effective pitch. What was effective was his combination of using the fastball with his splitter and the famous ghost forkball, which people were hyping up, similar to Daisuke Matsuzaka's gyro ball. But the ghost forkball, I gotta say, legit, from what I saw, no one could seem to figure it out. I've seen like the overlay that they put up on Twitter that showed the fastball, like how he throws the fastball and how he throws the ghost forkball, and they're like identical. But the drop off of the forkball is just ridiculous. This is kind of like when DeGrom would throw his slider. I mean, this was just very effective pitch that he got so many Marlins just striking out swing and looking completely silly on. They had no answer for it after that point. So ultimately, Senga comes out of it in good shape. He finishes final pitching line with what was eventually the win. Shockingly enough, he comes away with the win after that amazing first inning. But final pitching line was 5 1/3 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 8 Ks. And I predicted in the previous podcast episode that he was going to strike out 8, so I got that correct. I did not get the hit total right. I predicted he was going to allow 6 hits, and the earned run total I put in as 2 earned runs. So he actually performed better than I expected. Although I think I said he would go 6 innings, he ended up only going 5 1/3. It was pulled. He had apparently a 90 pitch limit for his start, which I felt was a good idea. Even though the Japanese pitchers are accustomed to higher workloads per day, he's also only accustomed to pitching once a week. So this is going to be important to kind of stagger and make sure that he is fully comfortable with this different schedule before you start asking him to pitch 100, 105, 110 pitches a game. because he's going to be pitching later this week. After that point, the Mets bullpen just kind of kicks in, and they do their deal. And it's really no headaches until they get to Steven Nagosic in the 8th and ninth innings, where Nagosic has a little bit of trouble and labors. He allows 2 walks and a base hit over the course of 2 innings, but comes away scoreless. Again, the Marlins were pretty punchless in this game, so even though they were throwing what was clearly their lesser contingent of relievers with Dennis Santana, John Curtis, and Steven Nagosic, it's a good crew. If these 3 guys are able to get swinging strikes, able to get guys out, it's important. Also important was the Mets offense, which was not as impressive as they were in the game prior on Saturday night. However, this Sunday they had played reasonably well, but this hero of the game was Tommy Pham, who went 3 for 4 and drove in 3 of the 5 batters by himself. The big shot coming with a 2-run home run in the 5th inning, where he connected off of Rogers, and that was pretty much the death blow for Rogers, who would walk. I believe he would. Oh no, he not walk. Sorry, Rogers also had a bad stretch of wildness. If you look at his pitching line, he would walk 2 batters over 4 and 1/3 innings, allowed 4 hits, but his real issue was just he had no control over his off speed or fastball, and he ended up hitting 2 batters that same inning in the 5th. So the two hit batsmen and the 2-run home run ultimately led to him leaving early that day. So Tommy Pham, a terrific game from him. No real expectations as to what Tommy Pham is going to be delivering or how often he's going to be playing. I would assume he's going to be playing in these situations where they need to have a little bit more defense out there. They want to rest Nimmo. Nimmo's health is going to be important for the Mets going forward. So how well he performs, or how well he actually played, how much he actually is going to be playing, is going to dictate. It's going to be dictated rather by how well he performs. So I would say that Tommy Pham had it was a great game. I liked what I saw from him, and was ultimately very important. I think that was probably if he's not playing, this is a much tighter game. But great performance. Other than that, there wasn't really a lot going on in this game. There's a fair amount of walking, and then Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Starling Marte, they were all pretty quiet. So it was a quiet offensive day. The Mets only had 5 hits, but managed 5 runs off of them. So ultimately, it's a solid game. So the Mets would take the game 5-1. They would take the series 3-1. So they are 3-1 to start the year off. Which puts them in a nice position right now. They are currently in first place, with the Braves in second place, behind them by a half game, as they won 2 games of the 3-game series from the Nationals, but ultimately lost yesterday, which is important for the Mets. The Mets early on are the NL East leaders after the first series, so they now take their show on the road till Milwaukee. And it's going to be an interesting start going on here. They have Carlos Carrasco making his season debut, and he will take on Freddie Peralta. And Carrasco's performance is going to dictate also how much he's going to actually be pitching for the Mets this year. This is going to be probably Carrasco's last go-around with the Mets. I don't predict that the Mets will keep him around for much longer, and there's certainly questions as to if the Mets' other pitchers, such as Tyler McGill or David Peterson, are pitching well later in the year when they get Verlander and Jose Quintana back. If Carrasco actually is going to be able to keep his spot. Now, Carrasco pitched well last year, but he's kind of an up and down performance guy. We don't really know how well he's going to be pitching this year, so it's important to watch him in this first start against the Brewers. The Brewers are going to be, I believe, contenders this year. I don't think, based on anything I've seen, that they don't look like they can be potential forces this year. They started off their year at 2-1. I think they'll be up there with the Cardinals all season long, and as contenders for the NL Central, and they might be a playoff team. So this will be a good test for the Mets going forward to see how well they do against a team that they could potentially be facing in October. But for now, we'll get to see how they go in another 3-game set. So important to watch. I'm excited for when the Mets actually come back home and play in front of a Citi Field crowd. Starting off the year on the road, never easy, but thus far they've handled themselves well, and I'd like to see them continue handling themselves well in Milwaukee. So make sure to watch that game. It's going to be today at 2:10 p.m. So check that game out as soon as you can. Thank you for listening to the Mike Spence podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike Spence Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.